On today's episode of FlashNotes TV, we're going to do a 10-minute book summary on Simon Sinek's new book titled Leaders Eat Last: Why Some Teams Pull Together and Others Don't. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, it's Dean Bakari and welcome back to FlashNotes TV. Today I've got an awesome book from our leadership series for you, and it's called Leaders Eat Last: Why Some Teams Pull Together and Others Don't by Simon Sinek. If you haven't heard of him, he's a best-selling author. This is his second book. The first book he wrote was titled Start With Why, and this book, Leaders Eat Last, is definitely an awesome book, and certainly one that the leader of every organization, if you're in a leadership position, should certainly pick up. And if you're not in a leadership position and you aspire to become a leader, or you want to learn more about leadership, whether professional or personal, this is definitely a cool book to give you some insight on some really old ideas that have been around for quite some time, but with an updated, refreshed way of looking at them, a different perspective, so to speak. So, 3 key insights we're going to talk about. Number 1 is going to be this concept of cultivating a circle of safety in your organization, business, or company. Key point number 2 is going to be about the 4 chemicals that drive our behavior to get us to do things in our best interest, and they make us feel sensations of euphoria and happiness. So we'll talk about that. It's pretty cool the way that he intertwines them into the entire book and makes his points with these 4 biological chemicals that drive our behavior. Key point number 3 is going to be about the difference between short-term leadership and long-term leadership. Okay, so let's jump right into it. We've only got 7 minutes or so left. Let's go. So key point number 1 is cultivating this circle of safety. Now, most of us have been in the position, whether we lead an organization or have been part of one under management or leadership, is this whole concept of it's like, you know, those little cliques that form inside of companies where you kind of form an alliance with a department or a division or a region, and you're kind of like pitted against another department or a region, or maybe you're just pitted against another sales associate or territory manager or whatever the case may be. That needs to go away, and that's his main point. So essentially what he does in talking about this cultivation of a circle of safety is to create an environment where everybody in the entire company can stop talking trash about each other, to cut the politics, and essentially begin to cultivate an environment of trust. How do you do that? Through empathy, through actually showing your vulnerabilities, through collaborating and working together. And most importantly, it starts with the leadership. We've all had leaders or have witnessed leaders that put a lot of pressure on their employees or their people, or are saying one thing on stage, talking about integrity, and then doing something stupid and ridiculous that does not exemplify that behavior or that value behind the scenes. So that's the whole concept of the circle of safety, is about cultivating an environment of trust and happiness in the workplace so that you don't have to worry about that here, because there's enough crappy attitude and behavior that goes on outside the organization. You don't want to deal with that inside the organization. Key insight number 2 is about the 4 chemicals in our bodies that get us to do things in our best interest. They are endorphin, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. So endorphin essentially is just there to mask pain. That's the runner's high that we all feel and get. Okay? Then dopamine is what you feel when, for instance, whenever I go to the grocery store, I have a list, either on my Wunderlist app on my iPhone, or I just write it down. And say I've made a list, I go to the grocery store, I'm walking down the aisle, I remember, oh crap, I forgot to put almond butter on the list. And I just grab the almond butter, I get the rest of my stuff on my list, and I go into my car, and then I write down almond butter on my list, and then I cross it out. Why the heck do I do that? I didn't know until I realized that it's because I was after this dopamine hit. It's that shoo, when you cross something off or check it off, it gives you a quick little hit of happiness, and that's dopamine. And it's natural, and all of us have it. And that's the goal achieving chemical in our body. It gets us to do things that kind of move us forward. It's that apple tree all the way in the distance that our ancestors in the Paleolithic era would be running after, and the closer they got, the more and more dopamine hits they got, which would drive them to move forward, even if it was hot outside, or if it was cold outside, or if it was snowing outside, whatever. The closer they get, the more the vision, that's why we say write down your goals, because vision, that's dopamine. Okay? Then the next one is serotonin. That's the feeling of pride and significance that we get. For instance, when you're getting your high school graduation or your college graduation, you walk up there to get your diploma, you get that thing, your parents are there, you're feeling great, they're proud of you, you're proud of yourself. It's awesome. That's serotonin just surging through your bloodstream. And then finally, oxytocin, the chemical of love. That is all about trust, connection, collaboration, working together, something that enough of our companies in the United States and in the world just don't have right now. So if we could really cultivate an environment of that lets oxytocin just flow, when you feel good, because when you serve and when you give and when you contribute to somebody else's life without actually asking for something back or expecting something from them, it freaking feels great. So that's oxytocin just flowing through your bloodstream. So the idea here is to get that in our companies and businesses and organizations so that from the top down, and it, again, begins from the leadership, flows all the way down to the soldiers at the edge of the circle of safety, working with then the customers, the business partners, the clients, the people that you serve in your company. So ideally, what we want to do is cultivate a nice, clean balance between endorphin, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. Moving on to the final key insight here is the difference between short-term leadership and long-term leadership. Short-term leadership is what Simon calls, he gives an example of Jack Welch and General Electric, one of the most profitable companies in the entire world. Run by one of the most well-known CEOs in the entire world, Jack Welch. What's the problem here? Well, Jack Welch would fire essentially 10% of his bottom performing managers every single year, period. Why? He needed to balance the books, to show profit, to look like they're doing great on the books and on the numbers and to all the shareholders and all that good stuff. But what kind of an environment does that cultivate in your company when you know that if you don't perform, you're going to get fired? That's carrots and sticks. And if you don't know why carrots and sticks don't work, watch Daniel Pink's TED Talk on motivation, and he'll tell you exactly why that does not work. So fear-based motivational factors just don't work. Carrots and sticks, that's an old methodology that does not fly. It causes emotional distress in the workplace. It causes emotional distress at home after you leave the workplace. It makes people not want to be there, and it's really one of the primary causes to the 50% plus number of Americans in the workforce today that either hate their jobs or feel like they have no other choice but to be in their jobs because they don't think that they could find another job if they were to leave. So it's so critical that every little decision that we make as leaders, starting from the top, has a reflection. It's very closely tied to performance, and putting profit before people is not the way to do it. Putting people before profit, however, is. And here's the cool thing. When you put people before profit, you actually see awesome results in terms of profit as well. So the profit potential increases when you instill trust, collaboration, and just when you're walking the hallways and you're talking to each other, where you're not pitted against one another like so many companies do, when people are engaged at work, when there's an environment of trust, where doors aren't closed, where people know that the leader of the company has their back. And when the people in the company know that the leader has their back, then the people will have the leader's back. And it's a dual commitment. So it's not just the leadership, it's also the rest of the company as well. From the soldiers all the way up to management and to the executive board to the CEO or chairman of the company. So now he also talks a little bit about long-term leadership, and he gives an example of former CEO Jeff Sinek of Costco. And now he compares the two, Jack Welch's GE versus Jeff Sinegal's Costco, and he compares the stocks. Now this is GE during Jack Welch's during his tenure as CEO, and now this is Costco. Just nice and smooth and easy. Just nice and clean. Now, if you were an investor in one of those companies, which one would you rather want to invest in? GE, where you're freaking out one day and you're excited the other? Or Costco, where it's predictable, it's progressive, you're continuously increasing your profits on a slow and steady, even keel that's going up slowly, but it's going up. Whereas GE, he's just rolling the dice, gambling every time, just doing crazy different things, regardless of the impact that it has on the people that work for the company or the people that the company actually serves. Quick recap, cultivate your circle of safety, get to know your 4 chemicals in your body, and lead for the long term, not for the short term. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Appreciate you watching this episode of FlashNotes TV. I'm Dean Bakari, and I'll see you next time.